Alright, good evening folks, it's Enforcer Matt and welcome back to another Short War video, and today we're receiving very disturbing news coming out of North Korea that the North Korean government is officially committed to sending troops to Ukraine to help Russia fight their war, and obviously that is very bad news. And we're also hearing as well that Russia's now agreed to supply North Korea with nuclear weapons technology in exchange for that help. So right now Western security officials are in a bit of a panic to figure out how to deal with the situation because it has gotten a bit out of hand in the recent hours here. And we're also hearing as well of a major train crash inside of Russia with a lot of casualties, and we have all the news on that. And we're also hearing that Israel is still amassing troops on the Lebanese border to potentially invade the country in the coming days, and we're hearing more countries tell their citizens to leave Lebanon immediately due to the uprising tensions. But with that, we're jumping into our first news article of the day, which goes to the Kyiv Post. And this is by far the biggest story of the day. We're hearing that Pyongyang, which is North Korea, says it will send troops to Ukraine within a month. And it says that the June 19th Defense Pact signed between Russia and North Korea included a promise to provide military assistance to one another. Within days, Pyongyang has now said it's sending troops to Ukraine. So it really can't be understated how significant this actually is. This is essentially North Korea joining the war against Ukraine and also the West and joining Russia's side. This is very bad news indeed. And while North Korea is definitely not one of the most advanced countries in the world, in fact it's probably the least advanced, they still have nuclear weapons, and also they do have weapons and armaments and troops that they can send to actually help fight the war in Russia's favor. So nonetheless, while this isn't as massive as like China joining the war, this is still significant and could lead to some bad consequences. But in our next post here, this one goes to Samuel Romani, and we're learning some more alleged news about what these troops will look like that are coming from North Korea. And right here we're learning from Samuel that North Korea will dispatch an army engineer unit to Russian-occupied Donetsk. He also goes on to say that this does not mean that North Korea is sending troops on the ground anytime soon, and the new security pact does not specify this, but the Pentagon is already warning of the possibility, as it says North Korean forces will be cannon fodder for Russia's war against Ukraine. Now this is the only part that I disagree with right here. All indications seem to indicate that by the end of the month, or by at least about a month or so, North Korea will have troops on the ground inside of Ukraine, and that is the current intelligence we're seeing, but it seems like Samuel disagrees with that a little bit. So from what I've seen, and according to the Kyiv Post, it looks like the North Korean troops are on their way within the coming weeks. So not good news whatsoever, but we'll have to wait and see. But jumping into our next post here, we have one from Max24, and we're also learning this other piece of very disturbing news as well. It says North Korea expects to receive long-range nuclear missile technology from Russia in exchange for the supply of artillery shells, says the U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Kurt Campbell, and also China fears that such cooperation could lead to war in Northeast Asia. So I must admit, this situation actually escalated pretty rapidly here, because now that we're hearing that long-range nuke technology will be going to North Korea, that is not good whatsoever. And the fact that Russia is arming that country, which is a rogue state, with such dangerous weapons, that is a huge escalation by Putin right here. And also that is going to really change the perspective in the future on NATO involvement in this entire war, because now we have a madman arming another madman, and this is not good whatsoever. And this alliance that they've created here could turn out to be the catalyst for some future escalation. So also we have even China fearing that this could lead to war in Northeast Asia. So this is quite reckless indeed, and a pretty big deal, and we'll have more news on it tonight on our nightly war news stream, of course. But for now, we also have some more news, and this is from Phytux News, and we're learning that in response to this, South Korea's Marine Corps has now resumed full-scale live-fire drills on the islands near the inter-Korean maritime border for the first time in 7 years, according to Yonhap News Agency. And this simply proves that escalations are running rampant right now between North and South Korea, and they're being egged on, and also the ante's being upped because of Putin's involvement with North Korea. So the fact that live-fire drills are once again started for the first time in 7 years, this indicates that things are definitely popping off between the two countries, and we're going to have to keep a close eye on this, because this appears to be the new hotspot. We thought for a while it was maybe Israel and Iran, but now the new real hotspot is North and South Korea, and this one is escalating rapidly. So we'll have to keep an eye on it and keep up to date with the news. But with that, we're now jumping into our next news article here, and this one goes to Nexta, and we're learning some also very disturbing news as well, that the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine reports the death of its attaché in Kyiv. And the embassy said in a comment to RBC Ukraine, which is a Ukrainian news source, source, they said, quote unquote, "We can confirm the death of a U.S. government employee who worked under the direction of the chief of mission at the embassy in Kyiv, and we are unable to provide further comment for confidentiality reasons." So very clearly, we don't know exactly how the attaché died. We're not sure if they died on the grounds of the embassy or outside the embassy, but whatever the reason is, we now have a dead U.S. Embassy employee, which will bring some questions forward as to how the person actually died, because, of course, they are in basically a war zone here in Kyiv, and we're wanting to know exactly how that death occurred to know if there was an escalation that resulted from it. But with that, we're moving into our next news article here, and this one goes to Nexta as well, and we're learning that a passenger train inside of Russia has derailed, and 9 out of 14 cars of the train are off the tracks, and medics are now treating the injured passengers on the spot. They have bruises and cuts, according to reports, and the number of injured is 70 people, and at least 5 of them may be in serious condition, and in total, there were about 232 passengers in it. So let's take a look at the video and see just how bad this train crash actually was. And as you can see right here, the train is right off the tracks. It is derailed in a spectacular fashion, and it's now sitting right on the side of the road, and this is where all the casualties occurred, and also the injuries as well. So quite a catastrophic train crash indeed, and pretty much on par for the disaster situation inside of Russia on a daily basis. So all these things happen constantly, and we're not sure what caused it, but indeed it is a bit suspicious. But with that, we're moving on to our next news article here, and this one goes to Null Reports, and we're learning of a powerful fire raging near Oleski, near the occupied left bank of the Kherson region. And as you can see in the photos right here, there is a large amount of smoke coming from the area. We're not sure what's on fire, but clearly something is in a pretty big fire right here, but we're not really sure. So we'll just have to wait and see when the news comes out exactly what has caused the situation to occur. But with that, we're jumping into our next news article, and this one also goes to Nexta once again. And in this post, we're learning more information about the missile debris that landed on Sevastopol Beach a while ago. And in this post right here, which is a source from the German newspaper, that says missile debris on Sevastopol Beach speaks of Russian air defense work, and rockets rained down on Sevastopol's beach in occupied Crimea on Sunday. 4 people were killed and more than 150 were injured, and initially the Russian side said that the AFU attacked Sevastopol with American ATACMS missiles, and one of them right above the beach was shot down by Russian air defense, and later Moscow abandoned this version and accused Kyiv of deliberate attack on the beach. But as the German newspaper reports, citing experts, that is unlikely, and the debris found on the beach looks like missiles from Russia's Tor surface-to-air missile system as it fires a 9M333 anti-aircraft guided missile. And right here we see in the photo that these are the actual warheads that were found on the beach, and this appears to match up with that Tor system that Russia possesses themselves. So it looks like it was not the American ATACMS that landed down on the beachgoers, but instead a Russian weapon. So that defeats the entire Russian narrative that somehow the Americans were involved in hurting and killing civilians. But with that, we're moving on to our next news article here, and this one goes to Nexta as well, and we're learning that Schulz, who's in Germany, rejected calls for peace with Putin, according to DW, and they said, quote unquote, "Putin continues to focus entirely on war and rearmament, and that no one can ignore this," said the German chancellor in a speech. And Schulz said that anyone who believes that territorial and political concessions to Putin from Ukraine will lead to lasting peace in Europe probably watches a lot of Russia Today. But I do agree with Schulz in the whole theme of his statement. If Ukraine were to hypothetically give Putin an inch of territory, Putin will take a mile. That's simply the way it's going to work. Putin is not interested in playing fair. He's made that clear throughout the entire war. And in fact, the entire invasion of Ukraine was not fair because they were a sovereign country. So making peace with Putin is not really going to work. And Putin does not negotiate in good faith, so it's pretty much a lost cause. So I do agree with Schulz entirely on this, and it's actually a pretty good point. But moving on to our next post here, we have one from Jason J. Smart, and we're learning that an official Russian government plane is now on its way to New York, and the last time that Russian officials flew to the United States was in June of 2023, and yesterday, for the first time since March 2023, the head of the Pentagon held a telephone conversation with the new Russian defense minister. So obviously we're not told exactly what this meeting is about. We're not really told what the phone conversation was about either, but the Pentagon is in communication conversation with Russia's defense minister, but we're not simply aware of what the content of the conversations actually is, but we'll have to wait and see if any more news comes out about it. But with that, we're moving on to our next article here, and this one goes to the Clash report. So let's switch gears out of Ukraine for just a moment and move to the Israeli region, because right now we're seeing tensions rise dramatically between Israel and also Hezbollah inside of Lebanon. So right now we're seeing here that according to the Post, the IDF is deploying more military convoys loaded with tanks and armored vehicles to the fronts in southern Lebanon and the Golan Heights. So let's take a look at the video and see the extent of the deployments. So right here you see there are multiple trucks loaded up with military vehicles and tanks and other equipment, and it looks like they are waiting to head toward the border region. In fact, they might actually be there right now. I can't really tell, it's too dark in this video, but clearly a lot of military equipment being moved. And also jumping forward in the video just a little bit, you can see there's actual military equipment on the ground being prepped for some type of military action. So a lot of equipment being moved once again, and also soldiers accompanying it as well. And they even have a Jeep at the front of the convoy. That's quite interesting to see as well. It looks like a modern actual civilian Jeep, not a military one, but it's out there as well with the military equipment. But with that, we're jumping into our next article, which goes to Winter Intel. And we also have more footage of Israeli reinforcements arriving along the Lebanese border and in the Golan Heights as well. And right here you can see once more tanks are rolling up right here in the middle of the desert along this fence row right here. So I'm assuming right along the border, and obviously a lot more equipment is up behind it, as we saw in the last video. So Israel is clearly preparing for something. We can't write it off as simply a non-issue, because there is too much military equipment showing up and there's too many countries calling for evacuations, which is what we get into in our next post, which goes to Aleph on Twitter. And in this post right here, we're learning that the Netherlands and Germany are now calling on their citizens to leave Lebanon immediately. Canada issued a similar call yesterday, as did North Macedonia on Monday, and Bulgaria and Vietnam did it on Saturday, and Kuwait on Friday. And on Sunday as well, Saudi Arabia advised its citizens not to travel to Lebanon, and also advised them to currently take precautions if they're in the country. So clearly, something is coming up, and even these countries are telling their citizens that they have some sort of intel indicating an imminent invasion, and that their citizens should leave the country immediately. So if we had to take an educated guess as to what the time frame may look like on an invasion if it does indeed occur, I would say look for it probably in the upcoming week, probably about 7 days into the future, and that should be maybe when it's going to happen, but that's just an educated guess. We could be wrong on that, but that's our assumption at the moment. But with that, that is actually our last piece of news for the day. So I hope you found today's video informative, and if you have found it informative, please press the like button and also subscribe to the channel as well, because that greatly helps us get the news out there. And also, if you want to support our operation financially, you can do so on our Patreon page, and the link is in the description below for that, where you can go over to Patreon, sign up for a monthly membership, and that greatly helps us keep doing this news, because it supports obviously all of our efforts. So once again, thank you all for watching. We'll see you all tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern on our nightly war news stream, and with that, bye bye for now.